Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. You know how sometimes you look at a seemingly calm river and it just draws you in? But underneath those tranquil waters, there could be churning currents and hidden depths that can pull you under without warning.
Absolutely. That's what makes these stories so compelling. The contrast between the serene facade and the turbulent secrets beneath the surface. It's a powerful metaphor for life itself, really.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This deep dive takes us right into the heart of a gripping crime thriller. So if unraveling those tangled knots of mystery keeps you up at night, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We're exploring Drowned Her Sorrows by Melinda Leigh, a book that'll keep you guessing until the very end. You can find a link to the book down in the description. It's about a sheriff who gets pulled into a case that starts out looking like a possible suicide, but quickly spirals into something much more sinister.
A web of family drama and financial secrets and resentments that run deeper than anyone could imagine.
Yeah, and we're going to be carefully navigating those murky waters today, giving you a sense of the story's depth, without spilling all the spoilers, of course.
What's so fascinating about this book is how it masterfully sets up this seemingly straightforward case. Then it just starts peeling back layer after layer of deception.
Right from the start, it's like dropping a pebble into a still pond and watching the ripples spread. And this first ripper comes in the form of a call that Sheriff Bree Taggert gets from Deputy Lori Collins.
Who's relatively new to the force, by the way. But even she could sense that something wasn't right with this abandoned car on the Dead Horse Road Bridge.
Dead Horse Road Bridge. Already the name just sends chills down your spine, right?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not just the name. The description of this old, rickety bridge spanning a river swollen with rain, it really sets a foreboding tone.
Oh, absolutely. Bree even comments on how the bridge has this significant drop, like 30 feet. And the water below, it's not just calm water, it's a raging torrent filled with boulders. Immediately she's thinking, okay, we might have a jumper.
The flooded river, it's not just a background detail, it almost becomes a character itself, a force of nature that reflects the turbulence of the human drama about to unfold.
And speaking of forces of nature, on her way to the scene, Bree has this encounter that really reveals a lot about her character and the environment she operates in. She stumbles across, of all things, a mama bear and her cubs.
Right on the trail. Imagine that. Now, this isn't just a random plot device, though. It actually tells us a lot about Bree. She grew up in the woods, so she has this innate understanding of animal behavior.
Which is probably why she didn't panic and just bolt.
Yeah.
Instead, she makes herself look bigger, tries to stay calm.
Exactly. It shows how resourceful she is, how she can think on her feet, even in a potentially life-threatening situation, traits that are, pretty essential for a sheriff.
Right. And there's this moment, this brief internal struggle where she realizes her bear spray is tucked away in her bag and completely useless. It's that reminder that no matter how much you prepare, nature always has a way of throwing curveballs.
It foreshadows the unpredictable nature of the case itself, doesn't it? The wildness of the landscape mirrors the wildness of the secrets that are about to unravel.
And those secrets, well, they take center stage when a body is discovered in the river. The worst-case scenario has come to pass. Chief Deputy Todd Harvey and the medical examiner, Dr. Serena Jones, they both arrive at the scene.
Dr. Jones is one to watch in this story. Her initial observations of the body, the head gash, the abrasions, they start to raise some questions that challenge the initial suicide theory.
Like, for instance, the fact that those injuries seem to have happened after death. And later, the body is identified as Holly Thorpe. Her husband, Owen, he had reported her missing the previous Friday night.
And of course, given the location of the car and the body in the river, suicide seems like the most logical explanation at first.
Right. Even Bree and her investigator, Matt Flynn, they acknowledge that. But they wisely decide to hold off on any firm conclusions until they have the autopsy report.
Which demonstrates a commitment to procedure and evidence-based investigation. They're not letting emotions or assumptions cloud their judgment.
Right. And while this investigation is unfolding, we also get glimpses into Bree's life outside of work, the human side of her. She's dealing with her niece, Kayla, and nephew, Luke, who are still grieving the loss of their mother.
Especially Luke. He seems to be really struggling with the idea of moving forward, like it's somehow betraying his mom's memory.
That feeling of guilt, it's so relatable, isn't it? Grief can be such a complex and messy process.
And on top of that, Bree is also navigating this relationship with Matt, her investigator, which, as you can imagine, creates a whole other set of challenges in their professional lives.
It's a delicate balance, right? And they're acutely aware of how the relationship could be perceived. So they've decided to keep it under wraps, at least until the budget negotiations are over. Politics can be a minefield.
It shows that they're both trying to prioritize their professional responsibilities, even if it means putting their personal lives on hold, at least publicly.
So, with the discovery of the body, the next logical step is to interview Owen, Holly's husband. And when Bree and Matt tell him the news, his immediate reaction is, she must have killed herself.
It's a natural response, given the circumstances. He then goes on to tell them about his Friday night, how he was drinking heavily at the Gray Fox bar and ended up passing out on the bartender's couch.
Which, establishes his alibi, but it's not exactly the most airtight alibi, is it?
Not when it hinges on being completely inebriated. And during the interview, they start to dig into the relationship between Owen and Holly. Turns out they'd been having some pretty heated arguments. Money problems, mainly.
A familiar refrain, unfortunately. And in this case, those financial pressures were compounded by Holly's dying mother and the costs of her care, which were shared with Holly's sister, Shannon.
So you have this added layer of stress, this shared financial burden within the family that's likely contributing to the tension.
And just to give you a sense of their individual circumstances, Holly was working as a bookkeeper at a construction company called Beckett Construction, and Owen was employed at Randolph Savings and Loan.
The fact that they worked in different sectors of the local economy, that might become relevant later on.
Potentially. And one small detail that they confirm is that Holly's toothbrush is at Owen's place, which seems to indicate that they were living together. But at this point, Bree and Matt, they're holding back on jumping to conclusions.
Rightfully so. They decide to wait for that medical examiner's report before really zeroing in on any one suspect or theory. It's all about due diligence.
In that report, it changes everything. Dr. Jones determines that Holly didn't actually drown. She was already dead before she went into the water.
It completely blows the suicide theory out of the water, pun intended. The key piece of evidence here is something called fixed side-lying lividity. Lividity, that's the pooling of blood in the body after death, and it's affected by gravity. So the fact that it was fixed in a side-lying position means that Holly's body was lying on its side on a hard surface for hours after death.
At least 6 hours, to be precise.
Exactly. And that just doesn't line up with the idea of her jumping from a bridge.
Plus, the examination of her neck shows that the damage is from compression, not strangulation. Like someone forcefully pressed on her neck, but not in the way you'd see in a carefully executed chokehold.
It suggests a more impulsive or panicked act of violence, someone who might not have known exactly how to inflict a lethal chokehold.
So now suicide is off the table. This is officially a homicide investigation. And with that new development, Bree and Matt know they need to secure a search warrant for Holly and Owen's home.
Absolutely. They have to be meticulous, look for any trace evidence that could point them in the right direction.
While that's being processed, they decide to pay a visit to Holly's sister, Shannon Phelps. And as you can imagine, she's devastated by the news. But more than that, she's adamant that Holly would never take her own life.
Her grief seems genuine, and she backs up what they already know about the volatility of Holly and Owen's relationship, the arguments, the tension.
And she adds a detail that's particularly troubling. She says Owen was very possessive of Holly, wouldn't let her leave him. That's a big red flag right there.
Absolutely. It paints a picture of a potentially controlling and abusive relationship. And to add to the already complicated situation, Shayna reveals that both sisters were under a lot of financial strain because of their mother's illness. Those medical bills were piling up.
When asked about her whereabouts on Friday night, Shannon claims she was home working late, so she's offering an alibi.
Which, as always, needs to be independently verified. And it's interesting to note that during their conversation, Shannon mentions this argument she had with Holly. A pretty bad one.
Where she said some things she now regrets. It's a touch of that human element, the guilt and remorse that often accompany grief.
It reminds you that even in the midst of tragedy, relationships can be messy and complicated.
With Shannon's interview done, they circle back to Owen and his, let's say, less than convincing alibi. They talk to Billy, the bartender at the Gray Fox, to see if they can corroborate Owen's story about drinking there all night.
It's crucial to verify those alibis, and luckily the bar has security cameras.
Which you would think would make things easier. But there's a catch. One of the cameras wasn't working that night, so not exactly a slam dunk.
It introduces that element of doubt, which is often present in these investigations. Things are rarely as straightforward as they seem.
And in a quick aside, we're introduced to Matt's sister, Katie Flynn. She's a big animal lover and runs a local rescue. We see her at a pet supply store where she has this awkward run-in with her ex-husband, Greg. It hints at a potentially troubled past.
It's one of those seemingly insignificant details that might or might not become relevant later on, but it does give us a glimpse into another character's world and their own set of complications.
Then it's back to Owen for a second interview. He sticks to his story about the argument with Holly being about Shannon and their mother's medical bills, so at least he's consistent on that front.
Consistent doesn't necessarily equal truthful, though. It just means he's got his story straight.
True enough. And then comes the search of Holly and Owen's condo, where they uncover something pretty surprising. They find evidence that Holly had recently bought some expensive items with cash.
Designer shoes, a handbag. The total came to something like $1,800.
Which is a bit odd, considering they were supposedly so strapped for cash. And when they ask Owen about it, he claims they have no idea where she got that kind of money. And there's also the matter of her jewelry, which seems to have vanished. Did she sell it? Or is it somewhere else entirely?
It's a major red flag. It suggests that Holly might have been involved in something Owen wasn't aware of.
So naturally, they seize Holly's laptop and any relevant mail they can find, hoping it'll shed some light on these secret purchases and her activities.
Digital footprints and paper trails, they can often lead to the truth, even if it's hidden.
Their investigation takes them to Holly and Shannon's mother, Mrs. Phelps. Understandably, she's heartbroken over Holly's death, but she's also convinced that it wasn't suicide. "My daughter would never do that," she says.
A mother's intuition. It's a powerful thing. And it's worth noting that she's the second person close to Holly who doesn't believe she would take her own life.
And she shares this seemingly insignificant memory of her daughters and little girls, sitting at a table, drawing. It's a sweet moment, but it'll come back in a big way later on.
It's amazing how those small details, those seemingly trivial memories, can sometimes hold the key to solving a case.
Shifting their focus to Holly's professional life, they run a background check. Nothing out of the ordinary. No criminal record. She'd been working at Beckett Construction for 7 years.
Steady job, no red flags on paper. But that doesn't mean there weren't any problems brewing beneath the surface.
And speaking of problems, Deputy Oscar gets reprimanded for prematurely telling Owen about the initial suicide suspicion. It's a reminder that loose lips can sink ships, especially in a delicate investigation like this.
It's a good reminder that information needs to be carefully managed in these situations. Releasing unconfirmed details can have serious consequences.
Then things take another unexpected turn. An alarm goes off at Shannon's house. Turns out someone broke in, cut a hole in the garage window. Immediately the question is, was Shannon the target?
And if so, was this break-in connected to Holly's murder? It adds another layer of danger and intrigue. And it makes you wonder, was this a random act or something more sinister?
And Shannon, when they question her, she's terrified. She insists she has nothing to do with Holly's death, that she wouldn't hurt anyone.
Fear can be a powerful motivator, but it can also be a sign of guilt. It's up to the investigators to determine what's driving her reaction.
Next up, they head to Beckett Construction to interview Paul Beckett, Holly's boss. And right off the bat, he's hesitant, clams up. He refers them to his attorney.
Which is never a good sign. It often indicates that someone has something to hide, or at least that they're worried about what the investigation might uncover.
But his secretary, she's a bit more forthcoming. She tells them Holly was a good employee, though there had been some typical office drama.
The usual workplace conflicts. But she also gives them a list of Paul's job sites, which could be helpful in establishing his movements.
And then they get a real bombshell from a waitress named Deb. She spills the tea, so to speak. She reveals that Holly and Paul were having an affair.
And to make matters even more complicated, she tells them that Beckett Construction is in serious financial trouble. So now you have two major motives: love and money.
A dangerous combination. A financial report confirms that Beckett Construction is indeed struggling, and Paul, despite having a clean record apart from some speeding tickets, is definitely feeling the heat.
The pressure of mounting debt, the fear of losing everything, it can drive people to desperate measures.
And speaking of desperate measures, the forensics report comes back with a curious finding. They found traces of this green clay, the kind they use on hard-true tennis courts, in Holly's car trunk.
Metabasalt, to be precise.
Right? Which is odd because there's no indication that Holly played tennis. It's a completely out-of-place clue.
But sometimes those out-of-place clues are the ones that crack a case wide open. It's like finding a piece of a puzzle that doesn't seem to fit anywhere, but then you realize it's the key to the whole picture.
With this new information, they decide to bring both Shannon and Paul back in for another round of questioning. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to shift.
Every new detail can change the whole landscape of the investigation.
In the meantime, they're keeping tabs on Paul Beckett, watching his house, and they start to notice some irregularities in his financial records. Lots of large cash withdrawals over the past couple of years.
Which raises even more questions about his business dealings and where that money was going.
And then, during one of their stakeouts, the situation explodes. They hear gunshots coming from Paul's property.
Talk about a sudden escalation. It's a stark reminder that these investigations are not without risk.
They rush in, and tragically, they find Paul dead in his garage, multiple gunshot wounds. And in the chaos, Bree herself gets shot in the arm.
A stark reminder of the dangers of this line of work. And to add to the drama, Paul's estranged wife, Angela Beckett, arrives at the scene.
Talk about a tense situation. But even with a bullet wound, Bree manages to give a brief statement to the press. Talk about professionalism under pressure.
It's a testament to her dedication and resilience. She's not letting anything deter her from doing her job, even when she's personally been injured.
At the hospital, she's being treated for what thankfully turns out to be a minor injury. They call it a flesh wound. Her colleague Dana's there, obviously worried, and her brother Adam shows up to offer support. We see a glimpse of her personal life, the people who care about her.
And during these interactions, a crucial piece of information is revealed. Paul Beckett has twin sons, both away at college, which expands the potential pool of suspects even if they were seemingly out of state.
So the investigation now turns to these sons, Timothy and Noah. Were they angry about their parents' separation? Did they feel protective of their mother? Was it a case of jealousy or even resentment towards their father?
The motives are certainly there, but the question is, could they have pulled it off?
A search of Paul and Angela's house shows that their marriage was indeed very troubled. Broken photos, that kind of thing. And when they interview the sons, it's revealed that neither of them has a rock-solid alibi.
Both of them knew about their parents' marital problems, and Timothy is especially evasive when asked about his relationship with his father. Something's not quite right there.
And then comes a bombshell.
Ugh.
Noah admits that he actually finished his semester early and is back in Gray's Hollow. So he's definitely a person of interest now.
That changes the whole game. Suddenly, he's not just a distant possibility, he's right there in the thick of things.
Next, they interview Angela Beckett, Paul's estranged wife. She's surprisingly calm and composed, considering the circumstances. She confirms the separation, blames it on Paul's infidelity, but tries to downplay the severity of their conflicts.
It's hard to read her emotions. Is she truly that detached, or is she masking something deeper?
She admits that she hired a private investigator to document Paul's cheating, which shows that she was definitely taking steps to protect herself.
It suggests a level of premeditation. She was gathering evidence, possibly for divorce proceedings.
And she even gives them a list of other people who might have had a reason to want Paul dead, which is pretty telling.
It suggests she might have suspected that his death wasn't random, that someone had a score to settle with him. And when asked if her sons knew about Paul's gun, she refuses to answer. That's a huge red flag.
It's like she's protecting someone, possibly one of her sons.
Exactly. And then they interview Noah. He's clearly nervous. And then out of the blue, he confesses to killing his father. "It was me," he says.
But as soon as they start asking about Holly, he shuts down, demands a lawyer.
It's a classic move, and it raises a lot of suspicions. Why confess to one murder and then clam up about the other? It just doesn't add up.
Todd, the chief deputy, he started to think that Noah might be taking the fall for his mother, trying to shield her from the consequences.
Which is a very real possibility. Family loyalty can be a powerful motivator, especially in a situation like this.
Meanwhile, they've been digging into Owen's alibi, and it checks out. He was definitely drunk at the bar that night. No way he could have killed Holly.
And just to complicate matters further, Noah's girlfriend provides him with an alibi for both murders, and it's apparently backed up by video evidence.
So if those alibis hold up, then who's left? Could Holly and Paul have been killed by two different people?
It's a possibility, but it seems unlikely given all the connections between them. The late-night phone call, Holly's visit to Paul's office, the green clay.
It all points to a single underlying cause. And that's when Bree decides to really scrutinize Beckett Construction's financial records. And she finds something interesting. A huge spike in plumbing expenses over the past couple of years, but no corresponding increase in revenue.
That's a classic sign of embezzlement or some other kind of financial shenanigans.
Exactly. And digging deeper, she sees these payments to two different plumbing companies, companies that seem a bit shady.
Shell companies, maybe?
Exactly. And when they talk to Deb, the waitress, She confirms their suspicions. She says Paul was probably funneling money out of the company, trying to evade taxes and hide assets before the divorce. A double whammy.
Which explains where Holly got that sudden influx of cash. She was either in on it or she figured it out and was using it to her advantage.
And just when they think they're getting close to the truth, a whole new crisis erupts. Matt's sister, Caddy, disappears. She doesn't show up to take care of her rescue dogs, isn't answering her phone.
Talk about a gut punch, especially given everything else that's going on.
They find her house unlocked. Her phone cracked on the ground outside. Doesn't look good. And Brody, the canine dog, he picks up her scent and starts leading them towards her minivan.
It's a race against time now. Caddy's in danger, and they need to find her before it's too late.
And then it hits them. A realization that changes everything. The Shannon they've been interacting with, it wasn't Shannon at all. It was Holly, impersonating her sister.
That seemingly small detail that Mrs. Phelps mentioned about her daughter's drawing, it becomes the key. Shannon's left-handed, and the signature on the Miranda form Shannon signed, it's with the left hand.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one tiny detail unravels the whole deception. Holly was alive this whole time. She staged her own death, framed Owen, and then pretended to be her sister.
It explains so much. The inconsistencies, the strange behavior. She was playing a long con, and she almost got away with it.
So what was her motive? Well, it seems like she was using what she knew about Paul's financial crimes to blackmail him.
But there's more to it than that. Remember that possessive husband. Holly was deeply in love with Owen and wanted to use the stolen money to run away with him and start a new life.
It was a desperate plan, and it involved eliminating anyone who stood in her way, which is why she probably killed Paul. And Caddy, well, she probably stumbled onto Holly's scheme or was mistaken for Shannon, another loose end that needed to be tied up.
It's a chilling reminder that love can make people do terrible things, and it shows how far Holly was willing to go to be with Owen.
Bree and Matt, they raced to the Dead Horse Road Bridge, figuring that's where Holly's going to try to stage her disappearance again, this time with Caddy as the victim. And they're right. They arrived to find Holly holding Caddy captive.
Back to the bridge. It's like a full circle moment, but this time the stakes are even higher.
Holly's laying out her plan, how she and Owen are going to take the money and disappear. And just then, Owen shows up, confirming his involvement and declaring his love for Holly.
It's a tense standoff, emotions are running high, and the situation is incredibly volatile.
And in the chaos that ensues, Holly kicks Bree, and Bree, in a split-second decision, shoots and kills Owen. Matt, seeing what's happening, jumps into the raging river to try to save Caddy, who Holly has just thrown in.
It's a heart-stopping moment. Matt risking his own life to save his sister. It's a true act of heroism.
And thankfully, he manages to pull Caddy out. She's unconscious at first, but they revive her with CPR. Both of them are rushed to the hospital. Holly's apprehended, and she confesses to everything. The embezzlement, Paul's murder, the whole twisted plan. It was all driven by her love for Owen and the desperate desire for a new life with him.
It's a tragic end to a complex and twisted tale. Love, betrayal, greed, it all culminates in this final act of violence.
And the story ends with Luke and Kayla finding a way to honor their mother's memory. They decide to spread her ashes at a place that was special to their family, a farm they loved. It's a glimmer of hope amidst all the darkness.
A reminder that even in the face of immense loss, there's still beauty and love to be found.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive into Drown Her Sorrows. Thanks for hanging in there with us as we untangled this web of secrets and lies.
It's a story that really makes you think about the dark side of human nature and the lengths people will go to for love, money, and a chance at a new beginning.
What was the most shocking moment for you? What twist caught you completely off guard? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to give it a like and share it with your friends.
And as you go about your day, consider this. How well do you really know the people in your life? And what secrets might they be hiding beneath the surface?